The next day at the breakfast table, the air was thick with unspoken tension. Malia kept her eyes down, pushing the taro and fish around her plate, unable to meet Sione's gaze. Leilani, cheerful and oblivious as ever, chatted about the market and the gossip from other wives. Sione was quiet, his presence a heavy weight in the small room. Every time he spoke, Malia flinched. Every time he moved, she felt his eyes on her. She thought she had imagined it. Maybe the lamplight had played tricks on her. Maybe he hadn't seen her after all. But then, as Leilani cleared the plates, Sione caught her eye. He held her gaze for a long moment, and a slow, deliberate wink was his only reply. The wink was a confirmation. It was a promise. It was a threat. Panic seized her. She excused herself, claiming she felt ill, and fled to the beach. She walked for hours, the warm sand between her toes, the turquoise water a stark contrast to the turmoil in her soul. What was he going to do? Would he tell her mother? Would he beat her? The possibilities swirled in her mind, each one more terrifying than the last. She didn't see him approach until he was right behind her. She jumped as his hand came to rest on her shoulder. Walking alone, Malia, his voice was calm, casual, which made it all the more frightening. Sione. I was just getting some air, she stammered, not daring to turn around. It's a beautiful day for it, he said, his hand moving from her shoulder to the small of her back, a gesture that was both paternal and deeply unsettling. You were a little quiet this morning. Everything all right? She could only nod, her throat too tight to speak. He chuckled, a low, rumbling sound. I think you and I need to have a little talk. About last night. Malia's blood ran cold. I don't know what you mean. Don't you? He stepped closer, his body a solid wall of heat behind her. I think you do. I think you remember watching me and your mother. I think you remember the little show you were putting on for yourself in the hallway. Tears of shame pricked her eyes. Please, Sione. I'm sorry. I won't ever do it again. I swear. Oh, I know you won't, he said, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. Not unless I want you to. His words sent a chill down her spine. What do you want? He turned her to face him, his expression unreadable. What do I want? He repeated, his dark eyes glinting with a predatory light. He looked out at the vast, indifferent ocean before turning his gaze back to her, his stare pinning her in place. I want to make sure our little secret stays a secret. Your mother, she has a good heart. A simple heart. She wouldn't understand why her sweet daughter likes to watch her quap. She wouldn't understand the dirty look in her stepdaughter's eyes while her husband's DY is buried inside her. Each word was a carefully aimed dart, finding its mark in the bullseye of her shame. Malia's face burned, and she wished the sand would open up and swallow her whole. Please, she whispered, her voice cracking. I'll do anything. Just don't tell her. Anything. The single word hung in the humid air between them, heavy with implication. He reached out and tucked a stray strand of her thick, curly hair behind her ear, his fingers lingering against her cheek. The touch was possessive, a claim being staked. That's a very big word, Malia. Are you sure you mean it? She nodded frantically, tears now streaming freely down her face. Yes. Anything. A slow, satisfied smile spread across his face. Good. Because I have a very specific idea of what anything can be. You like to watch, don't you? You liked the show I put on for you last night. But watching isn't enough. It's time for you to do more than just watch. It's time for you to participate. Her mind struggled to grasp his meaning. Participate? How? Tomorrow morning, he said, his voice a low, hypnotic command. After your mother has gone to town, you will come to my room. Not to the doorway. Inside. You will stand by the bed and you will wait for me. Do you understand? Malia's world tilted on its axis. This was beyond anything her frantic mind had conceived. He wasn't going to expose her. He was going to, what? Use her? The thought was horrifying, but beneath the fear, a dark, treacherous flicker of excitement sparked to life. The memory of his powerful body, the sound of his voice, the look in his eyes as he'd caught her, it all rushed back, a potent cocktail of terror and desire. But Leilani, she stammered. We'll be in town, Sione finished for her, his tone leaving no room for argument. And you will be very, very quiet. You're a good girl at being quiet, aren't you? You've been spying for months, and no one ever knew. You'll be quiet tomorrow morning too. He leaned in closer, his lips brushing against her ear. And Malia, if you don't show up, if you tell anyone, I will go to your mother. I will tell her everything. I'll tell her you're a little quap purse who spies on her own parents. I'll tell her you were touching yourself while you watched us quap. Who do you think she'll believe? Her loving husband, or her lying, sneaky daughter? The threat was absolute. He had her cornered, trapped by her own secret shame. There was no way out. There was only compliance. I'll be there, she choked out, the words tasting like ash in her mouth. Good girl, he purred, patting her cheek condescendingly. Now run along home. I have to go check the nets. He walked away, leaving her standing alone on the beach, the ocean breeze suddenly cold against her skin. She was no longer just a girl who spied on her parents. She was a co-conspirator, a victim, and a participant in a game she hadn't known she was playing. And the game was just beginning. That night was a blur of anxiety and anticipation. Every moment felt stretched thin, elastic. Every sound made her jump. She moved through her chores in a daze, her mind replaying Sione's words, the feel of his hand on her back, the look in his eyes. Leilani, bless her simple heart, noticed nothing. She chatted about the price of fish at the market, complained about the neighbor's noisy dog, and hummed as she mended Sione's fishing nets. The normalcy of it all was a cruel mockery of the twisted reality Malia was now living. As morning came, a dread settled over her, thick and suffocating. She ate breakfast in silence, her stomach a knot of nerves. She helped her mother clean up, her hands trembling so badly she nearly dropped a plate. Finally, Leilani got ready and announced she was going into town. Don't do too much work, Malia, she said, kissing her daughter on the forehead. You look tired. I won't, Malia whispered, her heart pounding. She waited in her room, counting the minutes, listening to the sounds of the house settling. She heard Leilani's footsteps leaving the house. She heard the floorboards creak as Sione moved around the living room. Then, silence. It was time. Her legs felt like lead as she forced herself to stand. She took a deep, shaky breath and opened her door. The house was bright, sunlight filtering through the windows. She moved like a kitten, her bare feet making no sound on the cool wood. The door to Sione and Leilani's bedroom was slightly ajar. She pushed it open and slipped inside. Curtains half closed, the room was steeped in shadows. Sione was sitting on the edge of the bed, his back to her. He was naked from the waist up, the sunlight carving his muscular back into a golden sculpture. He didn't turn. Close the door, he commanded, his voice a low rumble. She did as she was told, the soft click of the latch sounding like a gunshot in the silence. Come here, he said. She took hesitant steps forward until she was standing beside him. He turned his head, his eyes finding hers in the gloom. He reached out and took her hand, pulling her closer. His touch was electric, sending a jolt through her entire body. "Kneel," he said. It wasn't a request. It was an order. Her mind screamed at her to run, to fight, to scream, but her body, conditioned by fear and a dark, burgeoning curiosity, obeyed. She sank to her knees on the woven mat beside the bed, her eyes level with his powerful thighs. He spread his legs, and her gaze was drawn to the growing solop in his lap. He saw where she was looking and chuckled. "You've been wanting to see this up close, haven't you? You've been staring at it through the crack in the door. Time for a real look." He untied the string of his lap and let them fall open. His stapler DY sprang free, thick and heavy and already hot. It was bigger than she had imagined, a powerful, intimidating long Malia, jutting from a thatch of black curls. The sunlight caught the bead of moisture glistening at its tip. "Halim," he commanded. Her hand trembled as she reached out. Her fingers brushed against the hot, velvety seeking, and he let out a low hiss. Emboldened, she wrapped her hand around his DY. It was so thick her fingers couldn't quite meet. It pulsed in her grip, a living thing, hot and hard and full of power. "That's it," he groaned, his head falling back. "Skin him good. Just like that." She began to move her hand up and down his long DY, her movements clumsy at first, then growing more confident as he responded with low grunts of sweet pleasure. She was mesmerized by the sight of it, by the feel of it in her hand. This was the DY that quap her mother. This was the source of the sounds that had fueled her secret fantasies for so long. "You're a natural at this," he said, his voice thick with lust. "A natural little quap face. You were born for this, weren't you? To be on your knees, servicing a man's DY." His words were degrading, but they sent a perverse thrill through her. She felt a power in this act, in the way she could make this strong plumon groan and tremble with just her hand. He reached down and tangled his fingers in her hair, his grip tightening. "Op mouse blonde you," he ordered. Her heart hammered against her ribs, but she didn't hesitate. She parted her lips, and he guided the hurt of his fatpla DY to her mouth. The taste of it was salty, musky, utterly male. He pushed forward, sliding past her lips and over her tongue. She moaned around his thickness, the sound muffled. "Kanya." "Yes," he groaned, pushing deeper. "You kiss him. Take my DY in that pretty mouth. Show me what a good girl you can be." He began to move his hips, mquape mouse blogelia with slow, deliberate strokes. She gagged on that fatpla DY as it hit the backside of her throat, but he held her hurt in place, causing her to take more. Tears streamed from her eyes, but they weren't just tears of discomfort. They were tears of surrender. She was giving in, completely and utterly, to his will, to the dark, delicious corruption of it all. "Look at me," he commanded. She tilted her head back, her tear-filled eyes meeting his in the dim light. The look in his eyes was one of pure, unadulterated triumph. He owned her in this moment, body and soul. He saw the tears, the fear, and the submission, and it fed the fire of his lust. He held her gaze as he pushed deeper, his big DY stretching her mouth, testing the limits of her throat. "That's it, Malia," he grunted, his voice a rough, possessive whisper. "Look at the man who owns you. Look at me while I cop your mouth. This is your purpose now. This is what you are for." He pulled back, giving her a moment to gasp for air, a thin strand of saliva connecting her lips to the hurt of his DY. Then he slid back inside, deeper this time. The gag reflex was still there, but it was different now. It was a part of the act, a part of the surrender. The powerlessness was a strange, intoxicating drug. She was no longer just Malia, the stepdaughter. She was his toy, his secret, his slut. Blemlo Kwapim. He suddenly pulled out, his DY glistening and rigid. "Stand up," he ordered, his voice thick with impatience. She scrambled to her feet, her legs unsteady. He grabbed her by the arm and spun her around, pulling her back against his bros. His tight DY pressed into the small of her back, a hot, insistent reminder of his desire. His hands roamed over body blem, roughly kneading her susos through the thin fabric of her merry blouse, sliding down to cup the curve of her tight ass. "You've been teasing me with this, tight leak body, for years," he growled in her ear, his hot breath sending shivers down her spine. "Walking around here in these, ollie-click dresses, thinking I didn't notice. But I noticed. I noticed everything. I noticed how you'd look at me when your mother wasn't looking. I knew you were a dirty little girl just waiting to be taught her place." His hands found the hem of her merry blouse and pulled it up over her head in one swift, possessive motion. She stood before him, as nothing, trembling in the sunlight, her young nubile body blem, exposed to his hungry gaze. He turned her to face him, his eyes raking over her, from the swell of her susus to the dark triangle of hair between tupla leg blem. "Perfect," he murmured, his voice thick with approval. "Ka na perfect steret. MRP as if she weighed nothing, tupla oleg blem, instinctively wrapping around his waist. Karamem few steps to the bed, silipimum go down, on the edge of the mattress. Sione knelt on the floor between tupla leg blem, spread him up with his strong hands. He looked up at her, his eyes burning with a feverish intensity. "I'm going to testeam you now," he said. "I'm going to eat this sweet little corn until you're begging me to quap you." And then he lowered his head. Malia cried out, her hands flying to her mouth to stifle the sound. "Tamblomania, hot, now wet and impossibly skilled." Likimum, with long, slow strokes, from her carn hole to her pin, his mouth devouring her carn. No one had ever done her like this. The sensation was overwhelming, a torrent of pleasure so intense it was almost painful. Msekim pinblem, noflikim one tongue blem, and her hips bucked off the bed. He chuckled against thighs blem, the vibration sending another wave of pleasure through her. "You like that, don't you? You like him time, Papa bloyu kai can't blow you ah." She could only moan in response, her penis twisting in the sheets. He was relentless, mouse blem notten blem, working her into a frenzy. He pushed a finger inside her, then another, curling them to find that secret spot deep within. The dual stimulation was too much. Her body tensed, her back arching, as a powerful capsite ripped through her. It was a silent scream, a wave of ecstasy that washed over her, leaving her trembling and breathless. Before she could fully come down from the high, he was rising, moving over her. He positioned his thick hard DY at her carn hole, the fat head teasing her slick, swollen folds. He looked down at her, his face a mask of raw, primal need. "Last chance to say no, Malia," he whispered, though they both knew it was a lie. There was no going back. She looked up at him, at the man who was her father in every way but blood, and saw not just her blackmailer, but the man who had unlocked a part of her she never knew existed. She reached up, her hands wrapping around his neck, and pulled him down. "Do it," she whispered, her voice hoarse with desire. "Kwapi me papa." With a guttural groan, he drove into her carn. The pain was sharp, a searing, tearing sensation as he stretched her carn hole, filled her, claimed her. She cried out, a real cry this time, and he immediately clamped a hand over her mouth, his body stilling. "Shoo," he hissed, his voice a harsh whisper against her ear. "Our neighbors are up. You don't want them to know, do you? You don't want them to see what a slut you are, taking her father's DY right next to them." The threat was a splash of cold water on the fire of her pain, grounding her. She shook her head, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and shock. He held himself inside her, letting her adjust to his stapler dy, a thick, invasive presence that was both agony and a strange, dark fulfillment. He kept his hand over her mouth, his thumb stroking her cheek in a grotesque parody of comfort. "Good girl," he murmured. "Just relax. Let me in. Larim Papa make you a woman." He began to move, slowly at first, with shallow, grinding strokes that gradually eased the pain and replaced it with a deep, aching pressure. The hand over her mouth remained, a constant reminder of the precariousness of their situation. Every thrust, by his stapler dy was a risk, every sound a potential betrayal. Removing his hand from her mouth, he began to quap her can, his strokes becoming longer, deeper, more confident. The pain was receding, replaced by a burgeoning pleasure that was both shocking and undeniable. With each powerful thrust, he was forging a new reality inside her, breaking down the old Malia and remolding her in his image. Body blem, traitorously, began to respond. Her hips lifted to meet his, tupla lekblem, wrapping tighter around his waist, pulling his dy deeper. "That's it," he grunted. "Kwapi me back. Show me how much you want this. Show me how much you want my dy." The words, once degrading, now acted as an accelerant. They were the truth. She did want this. She wanted the depravity, the danger, the sheer, unadulterated filthiness of it. She was being forked by her stepfather while her mother was in town, and it was the most exhilarating thing she had ever felt. He shifted his weight, pushing one of her tupla legs higher, changing the angle. His dy now rubbed against a spot inside her can grease that sent jolts of electric pleasure shooting through her veins. She gasped, her nails digging into all shoulders. "Blomania. Found it, didn't I?" he growled, a triumphant smirk on his face. He began to target that spot, grinding against it with each powerful thrust. "That's the spot. That's the spot that makes little sluts like you scream. Go on. Let me hear you. But let me feel you capsite on my dy." The pleasure built to an impossible crescendo, a tidal wave of sensation that threatened to drown her. She buried her face in the crook of his neck, teethblum sinking into the hard muscle of his shoulder as her capsite crashed over her. It was a violent, shattering release, a convulsion of pure ecstasy that left her trembling and weak. He felt her can clench around him, the spasms milking his dy, and it sent him over the edge. With a final, powerful thrust, he buried himself to the hilt and roared his release into her neck. His hot cockura flooded her, a thick, potent wave that filled her completely, marking her as his from the inside out. They lay there for a long moment, a tangled, sweaty heap of limbs, body blow still joined. The only sounds were their ragged breaths and the neighbors talking outside. The reality of what she had done began to sink in, a cold tide of shame washing over the warm afterglow. She had let him quap her. She had enjoyed it. She had capsized on his dy while her mother was out. Sione finally stirred, lifting his head to look down at her. His expression was no longer predatory, but satisfied, almost lazy. He pulled his lamplight dy out of her can, and she felt a sudden emptiness, a trickle of his cockura leaking from her can and onto the sheet. "Get up," he said, his voice flat, all the previous intimacy gone. He stood and began pulling on his lap. Malia scrambled off the bed, body blem sore and sticky. She felt used, discarded. She looked around for her merry blouse, a wave of self-loathing washing over her. "Don't worry about that," he said, nodding towards her discarded merry blouse. "From now on, you will sleep, as nothing, when you're in the house." His words struck her with the force of a physical blow. The house. From now on. This wasn't a one-time thing. This was her new reality. What about the sheet?" she whispered, gesturing to the wet spot. He looked at it, then at her, and a cruel smile touched his lips. That's your problem now, isn't it? You're a clever girl. You'll figure it out. Just make sure your mother doesn't see it. He finished dressing and walked to the door. And Malia, he said, turning back to her. Tomorrow night, you'll be waiting for me. And you won't be wearing anything at all. Now get out of here. She fled the room, not even bothering to retrieve her merry blouse. She ran back to her own room, her, as nothing body, cold in the morning air, and Dove under the covers. She lay there, trembling, the taste of him still in her mouth, the feel of him still between two plelekblum. The shame was a physical weight, but beneath it, a dark, insidious seed had been planted. The seed of his control, the seed of her own depraved desire. The spying, the secret, and the cheating had just begun. And deep down, a part of her knew she was lost, that she would keep coming back for more, eager to be turned into the slut he had promised her she would be. No one would ever find out. It would be their secret, a dark, twisted bond that would tie them together in the heart of their small, sun-drenched community.